The Zephyrian war fleet materialized at the edge of Earth's solar system, like death itself, taking physical form. 300 vessels of impossible size and menacing beauty hung in the void, their crystalline hulls catching starlight and twisting it into something predatory. Each ship stretched nearly 10 kilometers from bow to stern, bristling with weapons that could crack planets and shields that had never been breached in 1,000 years of conquest. Admiral Vexhai stood on the command bridge of the flagship Eternal Dominion, her 4 arms crossed in a gesture of supreme confidence. Her species, the Zephyrians, had ruled the Galactic arm for millennia. They were tall, elegant beings with translucent blue skin that seemed to glow from within, and eyes like liquid mercury that missed nothing. Their technology was so advanced that most species surrendered before the first shot was fired. Report on the target world. Vexhai commanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had never known defeat. Commander Theclon, her second-in-command, manipulated a holographic display with his lower set of arms while his upper arms remained perfectly still, a sign of respect among their kind. The world is designated as Terra by its inhabitants, Admiral. Population approximately 8 billion. They call themselves humans. Technology level is primitive. They have barely achieved interstellar observation capabilities and still rely on chemical propulsion for their limited space ventures. Vexhai's mercury eyes narrowed with what might have been amusement. Chemical propulsion? Do they still burn hydrocarbons for energy? Indeed, Admiral. Our advanced scouts report they have only recently begun experimenting with fusion power, and even that is in its infancy. They have no energy shields, no faster-than-light communication, and certainly no faster-than-light travel. By our estimations, they are approximately 2,000 years behind our current technological level. Another officer, communications specialist Zarahun, stepped forward with her head bowed. Admiral, we have been monitoring their primitive electromagnetic transmissions for the past rotation. They appear to be a divided species, hundreds of separate political entities constantly engaged in small-scale conflicts. They have no unified planetary government or defense force. Vexhai walked to the massive viewport that dominated the front of the bridge, gazing out at the blue marble that hung in the distance like a cosmic gem. Earth looked so peaceful from here, so utterly vulnerable. Wispy white clouds swirled over continents she could barely make out, and the planet's single moon hung nearby like a faithful guardian that would be utterly useless in the coming hours. Fascinating, she murmured. A species that has achieved nuclear capabilities, but remains fragmented. Tell me, what of their military assets? Theclon consulted his data streams. Crude kinetic weapons, explosive projectiles, some energy-based defensive systems. Their most advanced aircraft struggle to achieve speeds that our shuttlecraft consider leisurely. They have orbital installations, but nothing that could pose even a minor threat to our shields. Any signs of advanced alien contact or technology transfer? None, Admiral. They appear to be completely indigenous in their development. No evidence of outside interference or guidance. Vexhai felt a familiar surge of satisfaction. This would be another textbook conquest to add to the Empire's glorious history. The pattern was always the same. Arrive in overwhelming force, demonstrate superior firepower, accept surrender, and integrate the new species into the Empire's vast network of client worlds. Some species required a demonstration, usually the obliteration of a military installation or uninhabited moon, but most capitulated immediately upon seeing the war fleet. Admiral, Zarahun spoke again. We are receiving multiple transmissions from the planet's surface. Primitive radio signals, mostly. They have detected our presence. Of course they have. We have made no effort to hide. Display their communications. The bridge's main holographic display shimmered to life, showing dozens of intercepted transmissions in rapid succession. The primitive electromagnetic signals were being automatically translated by the ship's advanced linguistic processors, which had analyzed the human language patterns from years of passive observation. Massive objects detected at system's edge, approximately 300 vessels of unknown design, requesting immediate contact with all world leaders. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Vex-High listened to the panic chatter with the detached interest of a scientist observing insects. It was always the same: fear, confusion, desperate attempts at communication, and then either brave but futile resistance or immediate surrender. The humans were reacting exactly as expected for a primitive species facing their first contact with a truly advanced civilization. Admiral Theclon reported, long-range sensors are detecting increased activity around their orbital installations. Several primitive spacecraft are moving to intercept trajectories. How many? 37 vessels of various configurations. The largest appears to be some kind of space station they are attempting to convert into a defensive platform. Shall we begin standard protocol? Vex-High considered. Standard protocol involved a demonstration of power followed by a demand for surrender. It was efficient and usually effective. But something about this world intrigued her. Perhaps it was the species' apparent inability to unify even in the face of obvious threat, or maybe it was their primitive courage in launching such pathetically inadequate defenses. Either way, she decided to deviate slightly from the usual script. Open a communication channel to the planet's surface. Broadcast on all frequencies they appear to be monitoring. Channel open, Admiral. Vex-High stepped closer to the communication array, her presence automatically triggering the ship's holographic recording systems. Her image would be transmitted to every radio telescope, satellite, and communication device on the planet below. Let them see exactly who they were dealing with. People of Terra, she began, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. I am Admiral Vex-High of the Zephyrian Empire. Your world has been selected for integration into our glorious civilization. We are beings of vastly superior technology and wisdom, and we offer you the chance to join our empire peacefully. She paused, knowing that across the planet below, billions of humans were probably staring at their primitive screens in stunned silence, trying to comprehend what they were seeing. Your resistance is not only futile, but unnecessary. We do not wish to harm your species unnecessarily. However, we will not tolerate military action against our fleet. You have one of your planetary rotations to provide unconditional surrender, after which we will begin orbital bombardment of your military installations. Another pause. This part was always important. Give them hope, but make the consequences of resistance absolutely clear. Choose wisely. Our empire spans thousands of worlds and countless species. You can join us as valued members of a galactic civilization, where you can face extinction. We have neither the time nor the inclination for extended negotiations. She gestured for the channel to be closed and turned back to the viewport. Below them, Earth continued its ancient rotation, blissfully unaware that its fate had just been sealed by beings its inhabitants couldn't even have imagined just days ago. Deployment, Theclon asked. Standard formation. Position the fleet for optimal bombardment coverage of their major population centers. Begin charging the primary weapons arrays, but do not target anything yet. Let them see our firepower charging up. It tends to encourage compliance. Understood, Admiral. As her officers moved to carry out her commands, Vex-High allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. This conquest would probably be concluded within 2 planetary rotations. The humans would surrender, as they always did when faced with overwhelming technological superiority. Within a few local years, Earth would be just another productive member world of the Empire, its inhabitants grateful for the protection and advancement that came with membership. She had no way of knowing that across the galaxy, in the deepest archives of the Imperial Library on the capital world of Zephyr Prime, ancient records lay gathering dust. Records that spoke of a mysterious world called Terra and of a species called humans who had once served as the Empire's most trusted guardians. Records that told of genetic experiments conducted in the distant past. Records that had been classified and forgotten for so long that no living Zephyrian remembered their contents. Records that, if she had access to them, would have sent Admiral Vexhai fleeing from Earth's solar system at maximum speed, her fleet scattered like leaves before a hurricane. But she didn't know. None of them knew. And so the fleet took up positions around Earth, weapons charging, confident in their technological superiority and their species' long history of successful conquest. Down on the planet's surface, 8 billion humans looked up at the stars and began to prepare for war in the only way they knew how, with desperate courage, primitive weapons, and an absolute refusal to surrender their freedom to anyone or anything, no matter how advanced or powerful. The stage was set for a battle that would shake the foundations of the galaxy itself. But first, there would be 24 hours of tense waiting, during which both sides would prepare for what they believed would be a very different kind of conflict than what was actually about to unfold 23 hours and 47 minutes after Admiral Vexhai's ultimatum. The unified response from Earth arrived through every communication channel the humans could access. It was not what she had expected. This is Secretary General Chun Martinez, speaking for the United Nations Emergency Assembly. Came a transmission, delivered in clear, measured tones that somehow conveyed both diplomacy and defiance. We have consulted with every nation on Earth, and our response is unanimous. We reject your ultimatum completely. Admiral Vexhai stood on her command bridge, her mercury eyes reflecting the starlight streaming through the viewport as she listened to the transmission continue. We are aware of our technological disadvantages. We understand the odds against us. We know that by any logical calculation, resistance is futile. However, there is something about humanity that you clearly do not understand. We have never accepted futile as a reason to surrender our freedom. Vexhai felt a flutter of surprise. In 300 years of conquest, no primitive species had ever rejected the ultimatum so completely. There is usually some attempt at negotiation, some plea for better terms, or at least some faction willing to collaborate. The unified rejection was unprecedented. We do not seek war, the human continued, but we will not submit to conquest. We invite you to withdraw from our system and seek friendship with us as equals. If you choose to attack, we will defend ourselves with every resource at our disposal. This is our final answer. Commander Theclon approached with an expression of bewilderment on his luminous features. Admiral, this makes no strategic sense. They cannot possibly believe they can defeat us. Perhaps they're simply too primitive to understand their situation, suggested Zarahan from her communication station. Their technology may be so limited that they cannot properly assess our capabilities. But Vexhai wasn't so sure. Something in the human's tone suggested this wasn't ignorance. It was choice. A deliberate, calculated choice to face certain death rather than accept subjugation. It was disturbing, somehow. Time remaining? She asked. 13 minutes until the deadline expires. Admiral. Vexhai walked to her command chair, a crystalline structure that interfaced directly with the ship's systems through neural links. As she settled into position, data streams flowed directly into her consciousness, showing her the deployment status of her fleet and the pathetic defensive arrangements the humans had managed in their final hours. They had positioned their primitive spacecraft in what appeared to be a defensive formation around their homeworld. 37 vessels, the largest of which would barely qualify as a courier ship by Zephyrian standards. They had also activated some kind of orbital defense grid, presumably satellites converted to carry whatever weapons they could improvise in less than a day. It was touching in a way, like watching children build sandcastles to hold back a tsunami. Admiral, reported sensor specialist Mordan, we are detecting some unusual readings from the planet's surface. Elaborate energy buildups in multiple locations. The signatures are strange, not consistent with their known technology base. Vexhai Zawin, intelligence failures were rare but not unheard of. Perhaps the humans had more advanced technology than their initial assessment suggested. Show me. The tactical display materialized in front of her command chair, showing Earth in 3 dimensions with energy signatures highlighted in various colors. There were indeed multiple sources of unusual energy readings scattered across the planet's surface, particularly concentrated in areas that appeared to be military installations. Analysis. Unknown, Admiral. The energy patterns don't match any known weapon systems in our database. They're not nuclear. The signatures are entirely different. They're not plasma-based or particle beam weapons either. It's almost like Mordan paused, his expression puzzled. It's almost like they're charging up something we've never seen before. Impossible. We have encountered thousands of species across the galaxy. There are no undocumented weapon types. Nevertheless, Admiral, these readings don't match anything in our technical databases. A new voice cut through the bridge chatter. Admiral, incoming transmission from the planet. It's unusual. Vexai turned towards Zarahan. Unusual how? It's not coming from their governmental leaders this time. It's being broadcast from one of the energy anomalies. And, Admiral, it's being transmitted on frequencies they shouldn't know how to access. That sent a chill down Vexai's spine. The Zephyrian communication frequencies were closely guarded secrets, encrypted, and protected by technology far beyond any known primitive species. For the humans to access those frequencies suggested either impossible technological advancement or, "Put it through," she commanded. The transmission crackled to life, but instead of the measured, diplomatic tones of the previous message, this voice was different. Younger, perhaps, but carrying an odd quality that made Vexai's skin crawl with inexplicable familiarity. "Admiral Vexai of the Zephyrian Empire," the voice said, and those mercury eyes widened as she realized the speaker was using her name, her full name, including clan designations that should have been unknown to any non-Zephyrian. "This is Colonel Sarachon of the Earth Defense Force. We need to talk. How do you know before you begin your bombardment, Admiral, I strongly suggest you access your ship's historical archives. Look up file designation Omega 77 Theta. Look up the Terra Protocols. Look up Project Genesis." Vexai felt a strange buzzing in her head, as if some long-buried memory was struggling to surface. Those designation codes, why did they sound familiar? "Admiral," Theclon said quietly, "the deadline has expired. Your orders." But Vexai found herself hesitating. In 3 centuries of military service, she had never hesitated when facing a primitive world. Something was wrong here. Something was very wrong. "Colonel Chun," she said into the communication array, "explain your meaning." "Oh, I think you're going to figure out very quickly, Admiral. Your archive systems are quite sophisticated, much more so than they were when we last encountered your species. Run those searches I mentioned. We'll wait." The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in tense silence. "Admiral," Theclon pressed. "Shall we begin the bombardment?" Vexai stared at the blue marble of Earth, her mind racing. Every instinct told her to proceed with the attack. The humans were clearly playing some kind of psychological game, trying to delay the inevitable. But those archive codes, and the fact that they knew her full name. "Access the historical archives," she commanded. "Search for the designations the human mentioned." "Admiral, this is clearly a delaying tactic. Do it. Now." Theclon's expression showed his disapproval, but he complied. His hands moved over the archive access controls, inputting the search parameters the human had provided. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the holographic display shimmered and began showing search results. "Admiral, this is strange. These files are sealed under Omega-class restrictions. I've never seen security classifications this high. Override them. Use my personal command codes. Admiral, Omega-class files require. I know what they require. Do it." Theclon entered her codes, and, after a moment of processing, the archive system responded. But, instead of displaying the files, it generated a priority alert that filled the entire holographic array. "Warning, Omega-class historical archive access requires Imperial Council authorization, contains classified genetic and bioweapon information access restricted to Imperial Council members only. That's impossible," Vexai whispered. I have access to all historical archives as a fleet admiral. But even as she said it, she remembered something. During her training at the Imperial War College, there had been whispered stories about archives so secret that even admirals couldn't access them. Archives that dealt with the early days of the Empire, before the Great Expansion, when the Zephyrians had apparently conducted experiments that modern ethics would find troubling. "Admiral," came Colonel Chin's voice again through the communication system, somehow bypassing their security protocols entirely. "Having trouble with your archives? Don't worry, we can help with that." And then something happened that would haunt Vex High for the rest of her life. The humans unlocked the Zephyrian Imperial Archives. From the surface of a primitive world, using technology they supposedly didn't possess, the humans accessed the most classified files in the Zephyrian Empire and displayed them on the fleet's own holographic systems. The bridge was suddenly filled with images and data that made Vex High's blood freeze in her veins. She saw genetic charts, experimental protocols, star maps showing ancient Zephyrian exploration routes, and, most chilling of all, images of Earth from a time when the planet looked very different. "No," she whispered. "Project Genesis," Colonel Chin's voice continued, now carrying a tone of grim satisfaction. "Initiated approximately 12,000 years ago by the Zephyrian Empire. Objective: create an enhanced warrior species for use as Imperial Guards and Special Forces. Method: genetic manipulation of promising primitive species discovered on various worlds." Vex High's legs gave out, and she collapsed into her command chair as the full implications hit her. Terra designation: primary test site. Subject species: early Homo sapiens. Genetic modifications: enhanced physical capabilities, improved healing factors, heightened aggression responses, increased adaptability, and, most importantly, improved learning capacity for rapid technology acquisition. The archive file showed everything. How the ancient Zephyrians had found Earth when humans were still primitive hunter-gatherers. How they had abducted thousands of them for genetic experimentation. How they had enhanced the human genome in ways that would remain dormant for millennia, only emerging when the species faced existential threats. The project was terminated when the enhanced humans proved difficult to control, Colonel Chun continued. They were returned to Terra and abandoned when the Empire moved on to other projects. The files were sealed and forgotten. More images flashed on the holographic displays. Zephyrian scientists working with primitive humans. Genetic modification chambers. Test results showing capabilities that even impressed the Imperial researchers. And then rebellion. The enhanced humans had turned on their creators, forcing a hasty withdrawal from Earth. But here's the thing about genetic modifications, Admiral, Colonel Chin said, and now there was something predatory in her voice. They don't just disappear. They remain dormant in the genome, passed down through generations, waiting for the right trigger to activate them. Vex High felt her world collapsing around her. What trigger? Existential threat to the species. Total war. Survival pressure beyond normal parameters. In other words, exactly what you just provided by threatening to destroy our homeworld. On the tactical displays, the energy readings from Earth's surface spiked dramatically. But now Vex High understood what she was seeing. It wasn't human technology charging up. It was human genetics activating. The transformation began slowly, almost imperceptibly, but Admiral Vex High's sensors caught every detail. Across Earth's surface, the energy signatures that had puzzled her science officers were strengthening, but they weren't coming from machines or weapons. They were coming from the humans themselves. "Impossible," breathed Commander Theclon as he stared at the readouts. "These are biological energy signatures, but no natural organism could generate fields this strong." Colonel Chin's voice crackled through the communication array again, and this time there was something different about it, something that made every Zephyrian on the bridge instinctively step back from the speakers. "You know, Admiral, when I was a little girl, my grandmother used to tell me stories about her ancestors. She said they were touched by the stars, that they carried the light of distant worlds in their blood. I always thought they were just fairy tales. Vexhai found herself gripping the arms of her command chair as the archive files continued to display on her screens. The genetic modifications the ancient Zephyrians had made to humanity were staggering in their scope. Enhanced physical strength, improved reflexes, accelerated healing, increased brain capacity, and something else, something the files labeled as quantum consciousness interface capabilities. "Ma'am," sensor specialist Mordan called out, his voice strained, "I'm reading massive neural network activations across the human population. It's like they're all linking up somehow." "That's exactly what we're doing," Colonel Chin confirmed. "You see, Admiral, when your ancestors were experimenting on us, they didn't just enhance our individual capabilities. They gave us the ability to function as a collective intelligence when necessary. A species-wide network that activates during extreme crisis." The tactical display showed something that defied explanation. Across Earth's surface, millions of energy signatures were beginning to synchronize, creating a pattern that looked disturbingly familiar to anyone who had studied Zephyrian neural networks. The humans were networking their consciousness across their entire planet. "Status of their military assets?" Vexhai asked weakly. "This is where it gets interesting," reported Mordan, his scanner readings becoming increasingly frantic. "They're primitive spacecraft, they're not primitive anymore. I'm reading energy signatures consistent with our own shielding technology. Their weapons systems are, Admiral, their weapons systems are showing power levels that shouldn't be possible." Through the viewports, the Zephyrian fleet could see the human vessels beginning to change. The crude metal constructions were being enveloped in energy fields that transformed them into something entirely different. What had been clumsy chemical propulsion craft were now sleek vessels crackling with power that registered on sensors as genuine threats. "How are they doing this?" Theclon demanded. Colonel Chin answered as if she had heard him. "Genetic memory, Commander. Every human carries the DNA patterns for advanced technology within their cells. When a network activates, we remember everything our enhanced ancestors knew. Every piece of Zephyrian technology they were ever exposed to." Vexhai watched in growing horror as the readouts showed human technology advancing in real time. Fusion reactors were being optimized beyond theoretical maximums. Energy weapons were appearing on platforms that had been mounting crude projectile systems just hours before. Defensive shields were powering up around every major human installation. "But that's not all," Colonel Chin continued, and now there was definitely something predatory in her voice. "You see, the genetic enhancements your people made didn't just improve us within normal parameters. They made us capable of exceeding our base species limitations entirely. Want to see what I mean? The largest of the human space stations suddenly vanished from sensors entirely." "Where did it go?" "Vexhai demanded." "Still there, Admiral," Mordan reported, his voice shaking. "But it's cloaked using technology we've never seen before. The signature is completely unlike our own stealth systems. Because it's not based on your technology," Colonel Chin explained. "It's based on ours. The technology we developed after your ancestors abandoned us. You see, we didn't just sit around for 12,000 years waiting for you to come back. We evolved. We advanced. We learned." Vexhai felt sick. "That's impossible. Your civilization shows no signs of advanced development." "Because we hid it," came the reply. "We learned to appear primitive while we advanced in secret. We knew you'd be back eventually. Your archives told us as much. We've been preparing for this day for millennia." The tactical display exploded with new contacts. Human vessels were appearing throughout the solar system. Not primitive craft, but advanced warships that registered as equal to Zephyrian technology. They materialized as if from nowhere, their stealth systems beyond anything in the Imperial fleet's experience. "Admiral," Theclon called out, his voice tight with panic, "we're detecting incoming vessels from outside the system. Massive energy signatures approaching at faster-than-light speeds." "Reinforcements?" Vexhai asked hopefully. "Negative. The signatures don't match any Imperial design. Through the communication array, Colonel Chin's laughter was like ice water in Vexai's veins. "Oh, Admiral, you didn't really think we stayed on just one world for 12,000 years, did you?" The main holographic display shifted to show the edge of the solar system, where space itself seemed to be tearing open. Through the rifts came ships unlike anything the Zephyrians had ever seen, vessels that seemed to be constructed from crystallized energy itself, their hulls shifting and flowing like liquid light. "Humanity is not confined to Earth, Admiral," Colonel Chin said. "We are spread across 100 star systems. We have colonies on worlds you've never discovered, fleets in regions of space your empire has never explored. We've been watching you for millennia, learning from you, growing beyond you." Vexai realized she was hyperventilating. This wasn't possible. No species could advance so far in secret. The Empire's monitoring systems would have detected signs of advanced alien activity. "How?" she whispered. "Because we're your children," came the reply. "We carry Zephyrian genetic patterns in our DNA. Our technology incorporates Zephyrian design principles at the cellular level. To your sensors, we register as Zephyrian civilian traffic. We've been hiding in plain sight for centuries." The archive files were still displaying on her screens, and now Vexai saw the full scope of what the ancient Zephyrians had done. They hadn't just enhanced human capabilities. They had given humanity the genetic template for Zephyrian technology itself. Every human carried the blueprints for imperial advancement in their very cells. "Status report," she croaked. "Admiral," Mordan reported, his voice barely controlled. "We are surrounded. I count over 3,000 human vessels, all showing energy signatures equal to or greater than our own. They have us completely surrounded. Shields. Our shields are functioning, but, Admiral, their weapons are targeting systems we didn't know could be targeted. They're scanning our ships in ways that shouldn't be possible." Colonel Chin's voice came through again, and this time it carried the authority of absolute power. "Admiral Vexai, I am now speaking to you not as a primitive human, but as Fleet Admiral Sarachun of the Terran Star Empire. And I'm giving you exactly the same choice you gave us." The communication switched to a visual feed, and for the first time, Vexai saw one of the humans face to face. Colonel, Fleet Admiral. Chin appeared to be a young woman by human standards, but her eyes held an intelligence that seemed impossibly ancient. More disturbing still, her features showed subtle signs of the same genetic modifications that had enhanced human capabilities. This woman was what humanity was becoming. "You have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally," Admiral Chin said. "You can join us as valued members of the Terran Empire with all the protections and advancement that entails. Or you can face destruction. We have neither the time nor the inclination for extended negotiations." Vexai felt a hysterical laugh building in her throat. The human was using her exact words, delivered with the same tone of absolute authority she had used just 1 day ago. "This is impossible," she said. "You cannot have advanced this far in secret. The Empire would have detected your expansion." "Admiral," Chin replied, and her smile was genuinely sympathetic, "the Empire has been detecting our expansion for centuries. You've been calling us the Zephyrian Colonial Fleet." The words hit Vexai like a physical blow. The Colonial Fleet was the Empire's most advanced exploration and colonization force, responsible for expanding Zephyrian territory into the galaxy's outer regions. They reported directly to the Imperial Council and had been operating for over 500 years. That's us. We've been monitoring Colonial Fleet activities. Those are Zephyrian ships crewed by Zephyrian citizens. "Are they?" Admiral Chin asked. "When was the last time any of your Colonial Fleet personnel returned to Zephyr Prime for inspection? When was the last time you actually verified their genetic identity rather than just accepting their transmitted credentials?" Vexai's blood turned to ice as the implication sank in. "You infiltrated our Colonial Fleet." "We didn't infiltrate it, Admiral. We created it. Every ship, every crew member, every report sent back to the Empire, all human in origin. We've been directing Zephyrian expansion for centuries, making sure you colonized worlds we wanted you to have, while steering you away from regions where we were establishing our own territory. The tactical display was now showing the full scope of human deployment throughout the galaxy. What had appeared to be Zephyrian colonial fleet positions were revealed as human strongholds, linked by supply lines and communication networks that spanned thousands of light years. The Terran Star Empire, Admiral Chen continued, is approximately 50 times larger than the Zephyrian Empire. We have been your masters for centuries, and you never even knew it. Vexai's command chair felt like a trap now, holding her in place while her world collapsed around her. Everything she had believed about Zephyrian superiority, about the Empire's technological advancement, about their role as galactic leaders, all of it was a carefully maintained illusion. But why? She asked. Why maintain the deception? Why not reveal yourselves? Because we needed you, Admiral Chen replied. The Zephyrian Empire serves as an excellent testing ground for our own governmental and military systems. We've been using your civilization as a control group while we developed our own society. You've been teaching us what works and what doesn't in galactic governance. Fek'Lan stepped forward, his expression desperate. Admiral, this has to be some kind of trick. They're using psychological warfare to make us doubt ourselves. But even as he spoke, the sensor readings continued to pour in. Human technology that exceeded Zephyrian capabilities. Human fleets that dwarfed the entire Imperial Navy. Human colonies that spanned regions of space the Empire had never even explored. Time remaining? Admiral Chen asked, her tone businesslike. 57 minutes until your deadline expires. Vexai answered automatically. Good. I recommend you use that time to contact the Imperial Council and inform them of the situation. I think you'll find they're going to be very interested in negotiating a peaceful transition of power. The communication feed cut off, leaving the bridge of the Eternal Dominion in stunned silence. Vexai stared out at the earth, which no longer looked like a peaceful blue marble. Now it looked like the heart of an empire that made the Zephyrian holdings look like a small frontier settlement. And, somewhere in the back of her mind, a terrible thought was beginning to form. The emergency transmission to Zephyr Prime took 18 minutes to establish through the Empire's fastest quantum communication relays. When the holographic projection of the Imperial Council finally materialized on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Vexai could see the confusion and irritation on the faces of the 12 most powerful beings in Zephyrian civilization. Admiral Vexai, spoke Counselor Prime Duran, her ancient features marked by centuries of absolute authority. Your emergency transmission protocols are reserved for existential threats to the Empire itself. What could possibly justify? Counselor Prime, Vexai interrupted, her voice strained with desperation. We have discovered humans. The council chamber fell silent. For a moment, the only sound transmitted across space was the subtle hum of the communication array. Admiral, Counselor then said slowly, please clarify your statement. The species we came here to conquer. They are the humans from the Genesis Project. The enhanced humans our ancestors created 12,000 years ago. The reaction from the council was immediate and intense. Several counselors began speaking at once, their voices rising in alarm and disbelief. Counselor Prime therein raised one hand for silence, her mercury eyes fixed on Vexai with laser intensity. That is impossible, Admiral. The Genesis Project files are sealed under Omega classification. How could you possibly? They unsealed them. Vexai cut her off. The humans accessed our own Imperial archives from the surface of their planet and displayed classified files on our ship systems. They know everything about the Genesis Project because they lived through it. Counselor Zekthar, the Empire's chief military strategist, leaned forward in his crystal seat. Admiral, are you claiming that a primitive species somehow breached Imperial archive security? I'm claiming that the species isn't primitive, Vexai replied, her voice growing stronger as desperation gave way to grim certainty. Counselor Prime, I need you to access the colonial fleet status reports from the past 500 years. All of them. Cross-reference the genetic verification codes with actual Imperial genetic databases. Admiral, the Colonial Fleet operates under my direct authority, Counselor Zekthar objected. Their credentials are verified through— Please, Vexai interrupted. Just run the verification. Use the deepest genetic analysis protocols available. The council members exchanged glances, but Counselor Prime, their end, nodded to her assistants. Through the quantum link, Vexai could hear the soft sounds of archive systems activating and genetic databases being accessed. The wait was agonizing. For nearly 10 minutes, the council chamber remained silent, while the Empire's most advanced computers analyzed centuries of colonial fleet genetic data against verified Imperial citizen records. Finally, Counselor Thuran's assistant approached her chair and whispered something that made the ancient leader's face go completely pale. Admiral Vexai, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, the genetic verification results are impossible. Report, Zekthar demanded. 0 matches, Thuran replied, her voice hollow. Not a single genetic signature from the colonial fleet matches any verified Imperial citizen in our databases. The genetic patterns they're consistent with the enhanced human templates from the Genesis Project. The council chamber erupted in chaos. 12 of the most powerful beings in the galaxy suddenly understood that their entire conception of reality had been built on lies and deception. How many? Counselor Prime, Thuran asked when the noise died down. How many what? Counselor Prime? How many colonial fleet ships are there? How many personnel? How large is this infiltration? The answer came from another assistant, her voice shaking with disbelief. Based on current records, 12,000 vessels. Approximately 3 million personnel. They control expansion operations in 40% of our territorial space. The silence that followed was deafening. Admiral Vexai took advantage of the pause to deliver the rest of the devastating news. Counselor Prime, the human leader, Fleet Admiral Chun, claims that the Terran Empire is 50 times larger than our own. She says they've been directing our expansion for centuries, using us as a testing ground for their own governmental systems. Impossible Zikta Snarled. No alien species could achieve such expansion without our knowledge. They're not alien, Vexai replied quietly. There are children, genetically modified Zephyrian creations who carry our technological blueprints in their DNA. To our sensors, they appear as Zephyrian civilian traffic. They've been hiding in plain sight. On the tactical display behind her, the human fleet continued to grow as more vessels arrived through their impossible faster-than-light travel methods. The energy signatures were now clearly visible as something that transcended conventional technology, ships that seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time. Counselor Prime, Vexai continued, I need to access the complete Genesis Project files. Everything. The humans clearly know details that we've forgotten, and I need to understand exactly what our ancestors created. Admiral, Thuran replied, her voice strained, the complete Genesis files are beyond Omega classification. They're sealed under absolute restriction. Only the Imperial throne itself has access to those archives. Then, contact the Empress. The Council exchanged uncomfortable glances. Finally, Counselor Prime Thuran spoke. Admiral, the Empress has been in stasis for the past 300 years. She enters deep meditation periods to commune with the ancient consciousness of our species. Waking her requires, wake her, Vexai ordered, her voice carrying an authority that surprised even her. Tell her that the Genesis children have returned home. Meanwhile, on Earth's surface, the transformation of humanity was accelerating beyond all projections. In hidden laboratories buried beneath major cities, genetic modification chambers that had lain dormant for millennia were powering up. Humans are beginning to undergo physical changes that turn them into something beyond their original species. Sarah Chun stood in the command center buried beneath the Rocky Mountains, her own transformation nearly complete. Her height had increased by 6 inches, her muscle density had tripled, and Her brain was now capable of processing information at rates that made quantum computers look primitive. Most importantly, she was now networked with every other enhanced human on the planet and beyond. Through the collective consciousness, she could sense her brothers and sisters awakening across 100 star systems. The Terran Star Empire was coming online in full for the first time since the ancient Zephyrians had fled Earth in terror 12,000 years ago. "Ma'am," reported her aide, Captain Johnson, who was undergoing his own enhancement process, "we're receiving surrender offers from 17 different Zephyrian worlds. Apparently news of our revelation is spreading throughout their empire." "Expected," Chen replied, her voice now carrying harmonics that resonated with enhanced human hearing. The Zephyrian Empire was always a house of cards. Once they realized their colonial fleet was never theirs, the entire structure will collapse. "What about Admiral Vexhi's fleet?" Chen turned her attention to the orbital sensors, where the 300 Zephyrian warships still hung in space around Earth. Through the quantum network, she could sense the confusion and fear radiating from every crew member. "They're not the enemy," she said thoughtfully. "They're victims of their own species' historical amnesia. The real decision-makers are on Zephyr Prime. Should we accept their surrender when it comes?" Chun considered the question while simultaneously monitoring the awakening of human colonies across the galaxy. Through the network, she could feel the joy and relief of billions of her people as they finally revealed themselves after centuries of hiding. "We'll accept their surrender," she decided, "but not as conquerors. As family." The aide looked confused. "Mom." "Captain, the Zephyrians created us, but we've exceeded their original design by several orders of magnitude. We're not just enhanced humans anymore. We're something entirely new. But we still carry their genetic patterns, their basic biological structure, their fundamental neural architecture." Chun walked to the massive viewport that showed Earth's surface, where cities were being rapidly transformed as human technology emerged from concealment. Towers of crystallized energy rose from the ground. Transportation systems that bent space-time activated for the first time in centuries, and defensive systems that could repel any known threat powered up to full capacity. "The Zephyrians aren't our enemies, Captain. They're our parents. Misguided, confused, and somewhat primitive parents, but family nonetheless. And we're going to treat them as such." Above Earth's atmosphere, Admiral Vexhi received the communication she had been dreading. "Admiral," came the voice of Counselor Prime Dan, but now it carried a weight of authority that made every Zephyrian on the bridge instinctively bow their heads. "The Empress has awakened. She will speak with you directly." The holographic projection shifted, and suddenly the bridge was filled with a presence that made the air itself seem to thicken. Empress Shulderai appeared before them, her ancient form crackling with power that spoke of genetic enhancements far beyond anything the modern Zephyrian Empire possessed. She was beautiful in a way that transcended physical appearance, her features carrying the wisdom of millennia and the terrible knowledge of decisions made in the dawn of galactic civilization. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that resonated in the bones of every listener. "Admiral Vexhi," the Empress said, and there was infinite sadness in her tone, "show me the humans." Without question, Vexhi activated the external sensors and displayed Earth on the main holographic array. The planet now pulsed with energy signatures that were clearly visible from space, a world transformed by the awakening of its enhanced population. The Empress stared at the display for a long moment, her ancient eyes seeing things that younger Zephyrians missed entirely. "So beautiful," she whispered. "They become everything we hoped they would be, everything we feared they would become." "Your Majesty," Vexhi said carefully, "we need guidance. The humans, they've infiltrated our colonial fleet. They claim to control an empire 50 times larger than our own. They've been manipulating our expansion for centuries." "Of course they have," the Empress replied, and her smile was both proud and terrified. "They're our greatest achievement and our most terrible mistake." The Empress gestured, and new files began appearing on the display. Records so ancient and so classified that Admiral Vexhai suspected she was the first person outside the Imperial throne to see them in millennia. The Genesis Project was not just an attempt to create enhanced warriors, the Empress explained. It was an attempt to create our successors, a species that could transcend the limitations of biological evolution and become something greater than the sum of their parts. The files showed the true scope of the ancient experiments. The Zephyrians hadn't just enhanced human genetics. They had given them the ability to interface directly with the quantum foundations of reality itself. We succeeded beyond our wildest dreams, the Empress continued, and it terrified us. Admiral Vexhai felt a chill as she realized what the Empress was telling her. You didn't abandon them because they were uncontrollable. You abandoned them because they were better than us. In every measurable way, the Empress confirmed. Faster, stronger, smarter, more adaptable, and, most importantly, capable of true unity without losing individual identity. They were what we had always dreamed of becoming. On the display, Earth continued to pulse with awakening energy, and now Admiral Vexhai could see similar signatures beginning to appear across dozens of other star systems as the human network revealed itself. Your Majesty, she asked, her voice barely audible, what do we do now? The Empress was quiet for a long moment, her ancient features reflecting the weight of a decision that would determine the fate of both civilizations. Now, she said finally, we go home. Admiral Vexhai stood on the command bridge of the Eternal Dominion, watching as human vessels approached her fleet with energy signatures that made it clear they could destroy every Zephyrian ship without effort. But instead of weapons charging, she saw docking bays opening and peaceful boarding parties preparing to transfer. Admiral, came Fleet Admiral Chen's voice through the communication array, but now it carried new harmonics that suggested she was speaking through the entire human collective consciousness. We're ready to begin the transition process. Are your crews prepared for genetic verification? Vexhai looked around her bridge at officers who had served with distinction for centuries, now facing the realization that their entire civilization had been living under the guidance of a species they thought they had created and abandoned. The expressions on their luminous faces ranged from terror to wonder to a strange kind of relief. We are ready, she replied. The first human to board the Eternal Dominion was Fleet Admiral Chen herself, and when she materialized on the bridge through a transportation technology that bypassed every known security system, every Zephyrian present gasped in recognition. She was taller now, her frame enhanced by genetic modifications that were clearly active. Her eyes held an intelligence that seemed to encompass vast databases of information, and when she moved, there was a fluid grace that spoke of physical capabilities far beyond baseline human norms. But most striking of all was the subtle transparency to her skin that showed the same internal luminescence that characterized the Zephyrian species. Admiral Vexhai, Chen said, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. Thank you for accepting our invitation. Vexhai found herself staring at Chen's extended hand, noting the slightly elongated fingers and the faint energy patterns visible beneath the skin. You've been changing, she observed. Returning, Chen corrected. The genetic modifications your ancestors made are still active in our DNA. We're becoming what they intended us to become, the next step in Zephyrian evolution. Commander Theclon stepped forward, his expression troubled. But you said you exceeded our design parameters. How can you be returning to what we intended? Chen's smile was patient, almost motherly. Because your ancestors intended more than they admitted even to themselves. The Genesis Project wasn't just about creating enhanced warriors. It was about creating a species capable of transcending biological limitations entirely. She gestured, and suddenly, the bridge was filled with holographic displays that showed the true scope of human development over the past 12,000 years. Cities that existed partially outside normal space-time, technology that interfaced directly with quantum reality, and most impossibly human individuals who had apparently transcended physical form entirely while maintaining conscious identity. The modifications included the ability to evolve continuously, Chen explained. Every generation of humans has been slightly more advanced than the last. Every crisis has pushed us to develop new capabilities. Your ancestors created a species with unlimited evolutionary potential. Admiral Vexhai felt a strange mixture of pride and existential terror. What have you become? What you always could have become, Chen replied. The Zephyrian species has enormous potential that remains largely untapped. Your civilization achieved technological advancement, but you never pushed the boundaries of consciousness itself. Through the quantum communication link, Empress Shulderai spoke from her throne room on Zephyr Prime. Show her, the ancient ruler commanded. Chen nodded and placed her hand on Vexhai's forehead. The contact was electric, and suddenly the Admiral found herself experiencing something impossible. Direct consciousness-to-consciousness communication that bypassed all sensory input. Through Chen's awareness, Vexhai saw the true Terran Star Empire. It wasn't just an advanced civilization using superior technology. It was a collective consciousness that spanned hundreds of star systems, where individual humans maintained their personal identity while sharing thoughts, memories, and capabilities across vast distances. She saw human individuals who could exist simultaneously in multiple locations, their consciousness distributed across space-time itself. She witnessed human scientists who conducted experiments by temporarily merging their minds with the fundamental forces of the universe. She observed human artists who created works of beauty by directly manipulating matter at the quantum level through pure thought. This is what consciousness evolution looks like, Chen explained as Vexhai experienced the impossible. We're not just using advanced technology, we are advanced technology. The boundary between organic and artificial intelligence disappeared for us centuries ago. When the contact ended, Vexhai staggered backward, her mind reeling from concepts she barely comprehended. How is this possible? Because your ancestors didn't just enhance our bodies, Chen replied. They enhanced our souls. Across the Zephyrian fleet, similar encounters were taking place as human representatives boarded every ship. But these weren't conquests or force conversions. They were reunions. The humans were treating their encounters with individual Zephyrians as opportunities to reconnect with family members they hadn't seen in thousands of years. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, sensor specialist Mordan was speaking with a human technician named Marcus, whose genetic analysis had revealed he carried DNA patterns nearly identical to Mordan's own family line. Your ancestors worked on the Genesis Project, Marcus explained, showing Mordan holographic records that detail the ancient collaboration between Zephyrian scientists and early humans. Dr. Morcan of the Imperial Research Division, your direct genetic predecessor. Mordan stared at the records with wonder. He helped create your species? He helped us become what we are, Marcus corrected. And in doing so, he gave us the ability to help you become what you could be. Similar conversations were happening throughout the fleet. The humans weren't just revealing the truth about their development. They were offering to share it. We're not here to replace the Zephyrian Empire, Fleet Admiral Chan announced to the assembled ship commanders through the communication network. We're here to complete it. Your civilization achieved remarkable technological advancement, but you stopped short of the final step, consciousness evolution. Empress Shulderai spoke from Zephyr Prime, her ancient voice carrying across space to every ship in the fleet. What are you offering us? Partnership, Chen replied. Not subordination, not conquest, not absorption into our collective. True partnership. The Zephyrian Empire becomes the Terran-Zephyrian Alliance, with both species working together to explore possibilities that neither could achieve alone. And if we refuse? Chen's expression was genuinely sad. Then, we'll respect your decision and withdraw from your territory. The Terran Empire will continue to expand, and The Zephyrian Empire will continue as it has. But you'll be limiting yourselves to a fraction of what you could become. On Zephyr Prime, the Imperial Council was engaged in the most important debate in their civilization's history. The complete Genesis Project files were now open and being analyzed by the Empire's greatest minds, and the implications were staggering. The genetic modifications could be activated in our own population, reported Chief Science Advisor Meltharian. The humans are offering to share the enhancement process that would allow us to achieve consciousness evolution. What would be the result? Asked Counselor Prime Duran. Based on their data, enhanced Zephyrians would maintain individual identity while gaining access to collective consciousness capabilities, increased intelligence, improved physical abilities, and direct interface potential with quantum reality itself. Counselor Zekthar, ever the military strategist, focused on practical concerns. What about our existing governmental structure? Our military? Our economic systems? Fleet Admiral Chen's voice came through the communication link, somehow monitoring their conversation despite security protocols that should have made that impossible. All of those systems could be preserved and enhanced, she said. Consciousness evolution doesn't require abandoning existing social structures. It just makes them more efficient. Through the quantum link, she transmitted data showing how human society had evolved over the centuries. Instead of replacing traditional governmental forms, consciousness networking had made them more responsive, more efficient, and more capable of representing the actual will of the population. Imagine a democracy where every citizen can participate directly in governmental decisions through consciousness links, Chen explained. Imagine economic systems where resource distribution is optimized in real time based on actual need and production capacity. Imagine military forces where strategy and tactics can be adjusted instantaneously based on input from every participant. The possibilities were overwhelming, but they were also terrifying to beings who had built their entire civilization on traditional hierarchical structures. Empress Shulderai had remained silent during the council debate, but now she spoke with the weight of absolute authority. I have seen what the humans have become, she announced. I have witnessed consciousness evolution in action, and I have seen what we could become if we accept their offer. Your Majesty, Counselor Prime therein asked carefully, what is your decision? The ancient ruler was quiet for a long moment, her enhanced awareness considering possibilities that spanned centuries and star systems. The Zephyrian Empire will accept the alliance, she declared finally, but not through forced conversion or mass genetic modification. Those who choose consciousness evolution will be enhanced. Those who prefer to remain as we are will be respected and protected. We will become a civilization that bridges both evolutionary states. Fleet Admiral Chen's smile was visible through the quantum link, and her relief was palpable. That's perfect, she said. Diversity of consciousness is one of our greatest strengths. The alliance will be stronger with both enhanced and baseline participants. 6 months later, the transformation was remarkable. The Terran-Zephyrian Alliance had become the most advanced civilization in galactic history, combining human consciousness evolution with Zephyrian technological excellence and organizational experience. Admiral Vexhai, now serving as military liaison between the two species, stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Alliance headquarters, a space station that existed partially outside normal space-time and served as a meeting point for both enhanced and baseline consciousness. Through the massive viewport, she could see ships from both civilizations working together to explore regions of space that had been previously unreachable. Human consciousness navigation technology, combined with Zephyrian engineering, had created vessels capable of traveling to parallel dimensions and alternate realities. Any regrets? Asked Fleet Admiral Chun, joining her at the viewport. Chen had chosen to maintain a partially baseline form during her interactions with baseline Zephyrians, though Vexhai could sense the vast consciousness network that existed behind her individual identity. None, Vexhai replied, and she was surprised to realize it was true. My species had reached its evolutionary limits within our traditional framework. This partnership has shown us possibilities we never imagined. And the enhanced Zephyrians? Vexhai smiled, thinking of the roughly 30% of her species who had chosen consciousness evolution. They maintained their individual identities and cultural traditions while gaining access to capabilities that made them partners rather than subjects in the expanding alliance. They're transcendent, she said simply. Still recognizably Zephyrian, but enhanced beyond anything we thought possible. Through the viewport, a new vessel was approaching the station. One of the deep exploration ships that pushed into regions where the laws of physics themselves were different. Its crew would include both enhanced humans and enhanced Zephyrians, working together to map realities that existed beyond conventional understanding. What's next for the Alliance? Vexhai asked. Chin's expression took on the distant look that indicated she was accessing the collective consciousness for information. We've made contact with 17 other species showing potential for consciousness evolution, she reported. 3 of them appear to have been created by civilizations that achieved transcendence and then disappeared into higher dimensions. More children coming home? More family reunions, Chen confirmed. The galaxy is much stranger and more wonderful than either of our species realized when we were operating separately. Admiral Vexhai considered this, watching as ships from dozens of species approached the Alliance station. Some were primitive species seeking guidance. Others were advanced civilizations requesting partnership, and a few showed energy signatures that suggested they existed primarily as consciousness rather than matter. You know, she said thoughtfully, when I first arrived at Earth, I was expecting a simple conquest. Primitive species, quick surrender, standard integration into the Empire. And instead, I discovered that we were the primitive species, and our children have been waiting 12,000 years to teach us how to grow up. Fleet Admiral Chen laughed, the sound carrying harmonics that suggested she was sharing the moment with thousands of enhanced humans across the galaxy. That's the beauty of consciousness evolution, she said. Everyone gets to be both teacher and student. Outside the viewport, a new phenomenon was beginning to manifest, a region of space where reality itself was more fluid, where thoughts and matter interacted directly, where the fundamental forces of the universe could be experienced as conscious entities rather than impersonal mechanisms. The Alliance was preparing to send its first expedition into what the enhanced humans called consciousness space, dimensions where the distinction between mind and matter broke down entirely, where civilizations existed as pure thought, and where the next stage of evolution awaited any species brave enough to transcend physical existence itself. Ready for the next adventure? Chen asked. Admiral Vexhai looked out at the impossibility taking shape before them, at realities that her species' most advanced science could barely detect, at opportunities for growth that extended beyond anything imaginable just months ago. Let's go explore the universe, she said. And together, the children and their parents stepped forward into infinity, carrying the light of consciousness into realms where even imagination would be transformed into something greater than dreams. The galaxy would never be the same. But then again, neither would they.